to climb a tree.
Watch out.
Ah!
Hi there. Welcome to the Forbidden Limb podcast. My name is Richard New, your host. I'm here with Jeremy Commander and Brian Heath. Today we're going to continue our discussion from last week because we left everything out for a whole week. We left everything exactly where it was. And we're going to be talking about early birds this week. So I'm going to start my question off with Brian. Brian, as I understand it, you're very pro early birds, and Jeremy, you're very anti early birds.
That's right.
Well,
I'm looking forward to
maybe
this.
That's maybe overstating it, but let's hear about what you have to say about them.
I'm gonna kill some birds.
Yeah, and it's not black and white. So I'm not completely pro by any means, and not completely against it. But I'm more for them in certain cases. I've heard a lot of people, kind of bigger names in the industry, talk about how terrible early birds are. That they're, that you should be ashamed. That you should be ashamed if you have an early bird on your Kickstarter campaign.
I agree.
And I definitely don't agree with that. I think there are times when it makes sense, and there are times when it doesn't make sense. But me publishing my first game, Good Cop, Bad Cop, we had nobody who knew who Overworld Games was. When we published it, absolutely no one knew who it was. Why would they take a chance on backing our campaign? There's really no reason. It's so hard to sell someone on a game, just with a video and some images and a description of the game. Mm-hmm. So people, just wouldn't be willing to give money for a game that might not be very good. The gameplay might not be very good. The art might not be. Graphic design might not be. In order to get a really good game that I'm happy with, really everything has to hit. And there aren't. I mean, if you look at all of the Kickstarter, games out there on Kickstarter. Not many of them hit on all of those.
They have a 50% fail rate or higher.
And not even just failing. I'm just talking about a good game. There are a lot of very bad games on Kickstarter. I'll admit that. And to prove that we're not one of them is really hard. So what we did to help with that is to have a discounted price if we can get some initial backers, because getting initial backers will make it so that future potential backers will be like, oh wow, we've already got 200 people who want this game. So like that gives me more confidence. It makes me feel better about giving them, a little bit of my money, and I believe in this product if all these other people believe in it too. So that was the only way we could get a big following. Other than spending money on marketing and advertising that we didn't want to do. It's riskier. So this is a really low risk way to do it. But that was because we were an unknown publisher. Yeah. So when we went to New Salem, we really went back and forth, Clayton and I, about whether or not we wanted to have an early bird for New Salem. It worked super well for Good Cop, Bad Cop, but we didn't know about New Salem. Like, are we big enough now where we don't need that?
So to back and get a copy of New Salem, I had to back at what level?
$24 for early bird, $26 for standard.
So $2 difference.
Yes. So it was minor, but it's enough for some people who just want to get a deal in order to do it. And really, we saw plenty of people who backed for the early bird amount so they can get in on it, and then they canceled later when they decided, they didn't really, want this. But it made them go through and back it, which got more support and more confidence in our product.
For $2?
Yeah.
For $2?
Definitely.
Really?
Definitely.
I'm struggling to understand this here.
One thing.
People are like, it's $2 cheaper. I guess I'll back it.
They do.
And then later I'll cancel.
They do.
That's poor life decisions right there.
But so like our next game that we put out on Kickstarter, it almost certainly will not have an early bird because now we're going to be established enough. People have seen 2 high quality games from Overworld.
So you're saying early bird reeks of desperation?
Well, it's I wouldn't put it in those but it shows that we're willing to, take a hit on profits that we make for it in order to give somebody a discount. And it's an acknowledgement of the fact that, you don't really have any reason to believe that this is going to be a good game. And we understand that. And so that's my stance on it.
But your price point is already like $15.
Right.
So even your game is terrible, I'm only out $15. And it's not like I paid a ton of money for that.
And I would agree with that with your argument if we were an established company. So if you were to see a bigger company like Manium Games or kind of a not a huge company but Stonemaier Games. So I know Jamie is against early birds and it makes sense for him. it completely makes sense for him because he has such a big name now that he doesn't need them. And I think I know what your arguments are going to be, and those arguments.
Brian Psychic.
It sounds like
Yeah.
being a new company is putting you in a desperate position.
It is.
So it is justifiable,
Yeah.
which I think is a very reasonable point there. But
Yeah.
please go ahead and give us the points that Brian already knows.
So I'm going to use not as the publisher, but as the backer. So here's my little Kickstarter profile here. I backed 256 projects at Kickstarter. Most of them board games. About 20 of those were like $1 or less just to watch the campaign. But about more than 200 were real backs for real amounts for board games. And I was looking through, because we were talking about price points today, and I was looking through my backer history at what's kind of the average price that I backed a game for on Kickstarter. I backed some games I paid $100 for on Kickstarter, and some games were as cheap as $10 on Kickstarter. But the majority of the ones, the most biggest price point was kind of in the $15 to $30 range. Most games I back, lots of them, fall within that range. And at that level, I'm not really worried about saving $5 on the early bird. If I go to a campaign page and they had early bird and it's already taken up, now I'm ticked off. Like, I didn't get here soon enough to get the early bird prize. Arrgh. I'm already upset. I have a disappointment when I haven't even read the whole dang page yet. I'm already upset at this Kickstarter campaign. And then, because of my own personal history, I may be suspicious. I may think, this guy, no offense, Brad, I love you, man.
Nope.
This guy's desperate, or this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Look how big the discount is on his early bird level. He does not understand pricing. That means he's not going to understand manufacturing costs and shipping costs, and this game is never going to ship to me, or it's going to take years before he figures out how to get his act together and do it. Or I hate when I go to a Kickstarter campaign and they have like 3 levels of early bird tier 1, early bird tier 2. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. They spend more time figuring out their early bird levels than they do their production costs and whether they can really make it. If your game is good enough, I'm going to pay what you're asking. I paid $30 for a card game this size before because I had enough faith in the game and the pitch video was good enough and it looked interesting enough or it had good reviews to pay for that. And the quality of the game got me to hit the pledge level. Or the person, I've backed a lot of Kickstarter campaigns because I liked the person behind it, even if I didn't necessarily was super interested in the product. I've had several buddies who've done Kickstarter campaigns. I tell them the same thing. Make sure you're in your backer video. Because I want to understand the person I'm backing. Who am I giving my money to? Who am I sponsoring? And I really wanted to see that. So I got some stuff that I have no interest in whatsoever just because I wanted to give that person $20 to support their dream. And you can get my money without having to resort to early bird. Trickery and pricing schemes and things like that.
But it's harder. So, we're not somebody that you're going to know. So we don't have that. We don't have a name. We don't have a name for us as designers and us as a publisher. We don't have that.
But I think you can offer me enough value, though. You could say, hey, look, this game may never be reprinted again. This is your only chance to get this game. Or we're going to have a Kickstarter exclusive artwork.
Yep. Or
we're going to have this little do that. And so that's enough for like, I want to jump on the bandwagon now before I miss that opportunity.
And that's for you. But there are so many people who buy games who just want a deal. And when you can give them a deal, then that is enough for them to make that purchase. And
are those good customers to have? Or are they just going to cancel on you anyways? And if they don't cancel, are they going to call you up and complain about how long it takes to get your game or how long it takes to ship? I mean, are those good customers that you really want to have?
And when you are an unknown publisher and you have a Kickstarter campaign out there, you'll take any backer because any backer will give the future backers confidence in you. Yeah. Yep, and it's hard to, what we're talking about here, it's really hard to quantify sometimes too. How much do you really care about seeing those early birds? Like, how much does it really bother you?
It bothers me a lot.
And or others, but how do you, put a number to that too?
Yeah.
And also, it's so hard to know if we wouldn't have had an early bird, how many people would have backed us just based on our campaign and how we presented it.
What I do now is when the early bird, like it's $2, I will deliberately not back at the early bird level and pay the extra $2 just because I want to vote against early bird. I'll get there on the first day of the campaign, and I will not back at the early bird level because if I have enough confidence to get in this game, I should be able to pay the extra $5, the extra $2 to hop on this. And so people will often look at it and go like, how come there's 5 when there's still left 5 people backing at this level when there's still more left at the early bird level? That's 5 is guys like me going, screw early bird! I'm going to back at the regular price. And I am getting early bird price, so because the MSRP in this is $15. Non-early bird on Kickstarter, what was it?
Non-early bird was 14.
14. Okay, well, so I'm still saving $1 over retail. For a lot of stuff, we use Jamie as an example. So he has like a $70 game. When I buy it on Kickstarter, I'm paying $50. And that's, there's no early bird for being the first 500 backers, but I am an early bird is that if I wait and buy it later at retail, I'm going to pay more.
And what I want to point out too is that when you don't back a project because there's an early bird, more often than not, you're hurting someone who actually really needs you as a backer. Because it's not someone who's established and is going to fund, guaranteed to fund. It's someone who needs to get people because they don't have a big enough name themselves to get you as a backer. So that's what I believe. If you are an established publisher, you shouldn't need to resort to that. But if you are someone who doesn't have a name, then you really need something like an early bird to get people on board. And I want to support those people. Those are the projects. I won't back it. I won't back anything by a huge name publisher just because they don't need my money. They don't need my support.
Yeah, that's kind of annoying when the huge publisher goes on there and says, "Oh, we're gonna reprint this game. We could reprint anyways. We're just gonna do it with Kickstarter because we can." And that is kind of a bummer. Although sometimes you can get a deal, or they could say, if we get enough people to reorder this. So I think Steve Jackson Games is a good example of this. We're going to reprint this old game we think people like, but we're not really sure how many copies we should print. And we talked about the more copies you print, the lower your cost per copy. And so some publishers, existing publishers, will use it to gauge the demand for their reprint. We're going to print 1,000 new copies. We're going to print 5,000 or 10,000 and see how good is the demand for reprinting this old game. So I can understand that. I look at my backer history, though, all the different levels here, and I look at the ones that have not fulfilled years later, because I go through and check them off. I got this one, did not get that one. Some I backed 4 years ago and still haven't shipped. And more often than not, the ones that never shipped or took forever were ones that did early bird. And for me, it's telling me that the guy behind it may or may not know what he's doing. Because also the early bird is, let's say that the only backers that hop on are the early bird backers, and then the Kickstarter peters out, and he said his funding go low enough that that's enough to reach it. Because sometimes the early birds add up to exactly the funding goal. What happens there is now he doesn't have the margins. Shipping costs him more than he thought he would, or fulfillment costs him more, and now he's underwater because that early bird discount ate the narrow margin he did have.
And we're back to burning comic books.
Back to burning comic books.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys both for joining me today. I think we've had a great discussion, and hopefully our viewers have learned a whole lot. I've been Richard New. This is Jeremy Commander and Brian Hink for the Forbidden Limb podcast.